Career development has been a hot topic for organizations and employees alike for years. How well companies address employees' needs for measurable career growth has a direct correlation on engagement and retention. And now, if you add in a global pandemic that has caused us to work in new and different ways, the demands seem to get more and more challenging all the time. So, how do we make career development personal in a virtual world? Well, we are going to answer that question today. So, get ready. Hi, I'm Andy Storch, your host on today's summit, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's legendary summit experts. Christine DiDonato is an author, speaker, and founder of Career Revolution and AwesomeBoss.com. Christine is a former talent management executive at Sony who has spent her career focused on her passion of researching and developing a new generation of employees to become the next generation of leaders, and has since facilitated workshops for thousands of people around the world. Her most recent book, Get There Faster, which is the no-nonsense, no-fluff guide to the career you want and is written specifically for young corporate professionals, just came out this month, and I'm really excited to have Christine joining us on the summit today. Welcome, Christine. Thanks for coming.
I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you. We've had many conversations about this over the years, and I know that you have so much passion and knowledge on this subject. You've worked with so many people, and now things have changed so much. And I want to start right there with the pandemic. How has COVID-19 and this new virtual world affected career development?
Well, I think, the way we're working now, which seems to be ad hoc, a lot of us at home and kitchen tables, children in the background. I've got fire engines, so if you hear any of those today, it's on the street. We're working differently. And then we think before this pandemic even hit, we were hearing a loud demand from our employees for more career development. And they were asking their managers for more time, more dialogue, more support, more resources. And here you go, taking away this human element and expecting managers to not only do what they were struggling with before, but to now do it in a virtual world. And so to make matters worse, I don't know if you've read any of the latest sort of news coming out around the mental state of individuals, but when we look at our younger professionals, especially millennials, Gen Z employees who are new to the workforce, we're hearing stories about depression, anxiety, loneliness. And so I always look at career development as a really personal thing, and you add these other layers on, we're really, things have essentially gotten even worse for our employees and harder for managers.
Yeah, it's becoming more challenging. And if we take a step back, even before getting into what's going on in this virtual world, what would you say in normal times are like the top keys to having a great career development program or having great career development in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first and foremost I always talk about is that people want face-to-face interaction. They want human interaction. Our careers are personal. It's not a work project, right? It's our lives, our livelihood, our future. And I think that was sort of the number one thing I was seeing. The other is that career development is got to be connected to what you value, right? That you are sharing a value system with wherever you work, with your manager. So really this idea of face-to-face personalization and then this value alignment, I think are the three things people were searching for in terms of career development.
Yeah, so people want that time. They want to have those conversations face-to-face if possible. And they want it really to align with what the work they like doing and that it aligns with their values and where they want to go with their career. What are the big challenges that have come up as a result of COVID, as a result of the pandemic that's really disrupted a lot of this?
Well, I think, we're all feeling this feeling of what's next. We have so many unknowns globally right now. And then you come to the US, we've got, political unknowns, economic unknowns. There's just so much. I think people generally don't know where their career is headed anyways. And under normal circumstances, they're always a little anxious about that. So now you add this other piece in, and I think people are just feeling really lost. Like they just don't know what's next. We're working, like I think you use sort of volatile in some of the sessions you're doing. I think that's what people are feeling most, lost in a world they don't know how to navigate right now.
Yeah, and they're seeing their managers and their colleagues less, right, than they maybe would have if they were in the office, and possibly feel a little bit less in touch or more remote from what the company has to offer for their career. What's the risk for employers who do nothing really to address the needs and just kind of assume that things will be fine the way they are?
Yeah, you just made me think, Annie. So I ran a quick poll on LinkedIn recently, just, anybody who wanted to answer. And I asked how well an individual's manager was doing in terms of investing in their career development during a pandemic. And it was either they are, I'm happy with it, I'm not happy with it, or they weren't doing it in the first place. And consequently, more than half of respondents said, well, they weren't even doing it before the pandemic, right? So I think one of the risks we have is that we know without really good career development and good career conversations, we know people become disengaged and they leave organizations. So now if they're not doing it in a state where people are more anxious and more fearful and more lost, I think the risk of disengagement and attrition grows exponentially. We're just at risk. And I think the more dangerous piece here is that we don't see it coming now. It's kind of an out of sight, out of mind. If a manager doesn't have a good pulse on that, people are going to just be giving a 2 weeks notice. They're not telling anybody that it's coming.
Yeah, and if they are not having those conversations, people are not happy, then you mentioned that the risk there is higher attrition. And have you ever looked at any numbers behind that? What is it costing companies when they're not having these conversations and the attrition is going up?
Yeah, there's always a few statistics that float around out there, and you could probably argue some of them, but depending on whether it's an entry-level employee all the way up to a senior executive, the industry that you're in, right, that cost to hire, could be anywhere from, 20,000 upward to 50,000+ to replace an employee. So we know that, some companies are really tightening budgets as it is. Some are restructuring, a little bit of reduction in force in some of the even prosperous industries. Mm-hmm. Of course, we're not talking about hotels right now and some of the travel, which we know is a real different story. Yeah. But if they're restructuring and they're keeping certain employees because they do certain work for them, those are the ones that really don't want to lose, right? Because you've already trimmed some of the organization. You really have to hold on to the people that you're keeping in the first place.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of young stars that you want to keep them, and those are the people that are the biggest risk because they feel like there's so much uncertainty in their career and don't know where they're going to go unless you give them that career development that they want. So we want and need our managers to do a better job of developing their people, giving them career development opportunities. So what can managers do to add that personal touch to career development?
Yeah, I think some of the basics that a lot of us have been trying to help managers with, it's that just because you're working remotely doesn't mean that you don't want to create, face-to-face time. But I think what's important is we tend to think that just means, okay, we're looking at each other on a video, on a screen, which is part of it, of course. But I think it's the nature of framing that meeting that this is about your career. And we're not going to use that time to talk about all the other things that are going on at work. And making that meeting more personal, more casual in some cases, whether it's, hey, let's share a virtual coffee in the morning, whether it's a, happy hour at the end of the day, whatever that may be. But I think there's another layer there, which is just basic management practice. And I think some managers try to do this, but they forget in the career development context, which is vulnerability. The more the manager can talk to an employee about their own struggles, the fact that they also are navigating a career, that they also may not know what's next for them, I think creates that human connection for an employee to be able to share their own challenges. Right? A career development conversation doesn't always have to be, I want to be promoted, and the manager says, let me show you how to do it, right? That's a very transactional do or die conversation. Career development is an ongoing conversation that managers can have, and it starts with, how are you feeling? What are you struggling with? Where do you see some of this work headed? What are you enjoying? What are you not enjoying? What's draining you?
Yeah, sometimes it's so foundational and almost basic that the managers just need to have those conversations with their employees and ask them questions, ask how they're doing, how they're feeling, share some of their own experience. But you've told me many times, a lot of the frustration happens on the manager side too, that they don't really know what employees want and they don't know how to give them advice, right? So what can employees do and how can organizations enable them to really own their career in this new world?
Yeah, Andy, you know, I am a big advocate of not putting all of the pressure on the manager to become glorified career coaches. I really, I preach, I teach about employees taking ownership of this and doing something on their own. And a lot of that has to do with just giving them a little guidance on the type of self-exploration that will be beneficial to them. There's no person that I've met, no matter where you are in your career, right, male, female, globally, that is not interested in thinking about their own values, their own vision for success, right? And we need to be doing it all the time. It's not a one-time thing where you think, what's important to me? You know, what do I want to do next? We keep thinking about that. But I find that so many employees don't even know that that's okay to be thinking about those things on quote work time. You know, it doesn't seem like a work activity. And so I think the more that we can help employees understand and provide them tools and resources to figure themselves out, the better it is for the organization, because then the employee is going to come to that manager instead of saying, hey, I want career development, you know, awkward silence. And the manager feels they need to give them some kind of answer, right? The employee is coming to them and saying, hey, I discovered this about myself. I'm very energized by work of this nature. And when I'm doing that type of work, I can add a lot of value. What other projects do we have on this team where I can add that kind of value? Now, it's at that point, the manager is going, yes, thank you. Where you want to take on more work? I have more work for you to do, right? And then the employee feels supported.
Yeah, that's so important. And, you know, we're talking about employees actually stepping up and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. Can you help me? Which makes it a lot easier for managers. But sometimes employees don't know what to do. And so it's important for organizations to help enable them, to give them some of the things that will allow them to go do that. I know you've been running a program on this for many years. You just came out with this book called Get There Faster. I've read the whole book. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Highly recommend anybody else go out there and get it. But maybe we could just quickly walk through what are the 5 tools, the 5 things that employees can do to take more ownership and be more equipped to have that conversation.
Yeah, and so like you said, our program Accelerate Me and the book walk people through in a guided way 5 steps, and each step contains a series of activities where 100% of the onus is on the employee. So this is something you can give to your employee and say, here's the guide, right? And in it is all the things that you can do that we support. So the first is discovering work that energizes you, right? The body of work of strengths. Where will you add the most value and feel the best when you're doing this work? The second is what do you value most? And we have an assessment tool to help people narrow down 5 values that they own. And that instead of saying, company, you need to change to my values, the employee instead can say, manager, here's a value that's so important to me and my needs are not being met. Here's some things I think I'd like to do that I need your support on. Very different conversation. The third, of course, is vision. Where am I headed? And not saying what's your 10-year plan, but what are the themes of success for me as an authentic human being? And then how do I guide my career in that direction? The 4th step, which is the hard one, is what are the blind spots that can get in my way? So many times I have managers say to me, I didn't promote this person, and here's a laundry list of all the things they don't do well. And I say, how many of those things is the employee aware of? Well, they should be. You know, I've kind of told them. I mean, if they don't see it, that's not my problem. So we can put the onus on employees using a feedback tool to say, go out and get feedback, and not because it's just important to the company, but because it's important to your career and will block or derail where you want to go. And of course, the last piece, when you have all that, is what are the conversations that you need to have? And too often, we train managers and we train employees on how to have a career conversation, great structures, great formats, and then they go in and have a career conversation using a template, but they haven't done the 4 steps before. So again, you're just getting the deer in the headlights conversation, which frustrates everybody. So I say, don't waste your training dollars on how to have a career conversation training. First, do the other steps, and then you can do the conversation piece.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. And, you know, to walk through these and then actually know where you want to go, what you want to do with your career, and then sit down and be able to have that conversation with your manager. I think the most eye-opening for me, as I've gone through this with you many times, is that blind spots part, because first of all, it's hard to go get feedback and see the things that you maybe not as good at. But like you said, until we know those things, it's hard to get guidance and feedback to go out and improve those things. And I've heard you share a couple examples before. I wonder if you'd share one now of where someone could take that to their manager and then use it to their advantage to get that promotion or wherever they want to go.
Yeah, we've got, gosh, there's so many that come to mind. I always love when we're in a class with someone and they have the light bulb go on and they say it out loud, and it just makes it all worth it. So, for example, we have employees that uncover in our step 3 vision that they want to become a manager. That is where they're headed. That's their goal. So they know that. But by putting in this blind spot step, instead of going in and just saying, hey, manager, I want to be in your job. When can you promote me? They take a blind spot assessment, and one participant found that their peers didn't see them as someone who volunteered to take on work, that they were sort of waiting to be told what to do. Well, this was total news to this employee, that there was a perception out there that they weren't really a natural leader, essentially, that they were sitting back. So by getting this feedback, the employee then has their career conversation with their manager, and they say, hey, manager, I discovered throughout this process that I really do want to become a people manager. That's my objective. I got some feedback that the team is not seeing me volunteer or step up to take on work. Can you think of any examples when you saw that happen? Now, think about being in the manager's shoes and having an employee self-discover that, and then all your job is to say, yeah, there was a meeting last week, and I did notice that the team jumped in, raised their hand, and you sat back and it looked like you were waiting, right? That was a moment. Now, all the employee has to do in that next meeting is change a little piece of their behavior, therefore changing perception, therefore supporting their goal of becoming a manager. It sounds so complex, but it's very simple.
Yeah, and I just think about the shift from just the open asking a manager, how can I get better? And then hearing that feedback for the first time and getting, almost feeling defensive versus having it, some time to process a survey and then come to a manager and bring it to them and say, I want to get better at this. Have you noticed times when I've done this so that I can figure it out? And then actually getting those specific examples to work on can be really helpful.
Yeah, we talk, I know, Andy, you're so passionate too with your book coming out around owning your career. We've seen companies brand this, you own your career. It's on you, you own it. And then it's like, okay, we said you own it, now go own it, right? People knew how to do that, they'd be doing it.
Right.
People want to own their career. But what we find is if you can give them the tools where they can own things on a micro level, like getting feedback on their own terms. It's just what you said. They're empowered, and it's not that awkward conversation where the manager feels like they're telling everybody what's wrong with them all the time. Mm-hmm. The employee is saying, I discovered this, and I understand that this perception will impact my ability of achieving my objective. I need your help on changing that perception. It's I own that and I'm in charge of it now. And I'm much more likely in that instance to do something about it. It's mine to do something with. And I feel like that's ownership. That's helping somebody own their career.
You bring something up interesting there that I don't know if you and I have talked about this specifically, but I know we're both very aware and big on talking about personal brand and professional brand. And, when we talk about that, it's really about reputation and perception. And no matter how good you think you are at something, it's the perception of the people around you that's going to determine your success in the organization, right? That perception is reality. So it's important to find out what is the perception of how I show up in the workplace.
Absolutely. And we find, especially with younger employees, when we do small group mentor circles, when we debrief people's feedback reports. And I always ask everyone, what's the biggest aha moment that you had when you saw your results, right? You get a lot of feedback, but I'm more interested in what they took from it. And I cannot tell you how many times younger employees will say things like, wow, I am perceived as so smart and so powerful. And I didn't know that. So I've been sitting back thinking that no one wants to hear my opinion. And yet they're telling me they want more opinion. I mean, think about the power you can unleash if a big percentage of your entry-level employees discovered that they had something more to offer and thought it was okay to volunteer to take on more and offer their opinion. I mean, that's huge. That one moment that someone has changes their behavior moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful. Okay. So what can we as organizations do? Because our audience here, our talent development professionals are looking for ways to develop, enable, engage our people, help them own their careers, like you said, beyond just saying, you own your career now, congratulations. How can organizations help their employees feel like they're being invested in and give them the tools to go do this?
Yeah, so a big indicator for me to answer this is I've got a couple courses on LinkedIn Learning. One of them is called Taking Charge of Your Career. Since we've all been more quarantined, I have doubled the number of people who are taking that course. So what that tells me is our employees are hungry for formal career development. They want to learn how to manage their career. They are going out and looking for resources. And I know this because I have a resource out there and I'm seeing the uptick. So as an organization, I say if you want to be seen as a wonderful altruistic company who wants to help your employees, even if you have no promotional roles for them, offer them the type of learning they're looking for coming from you, whether that's you giving them a tool like LinkedIn Learning, whether that's bringing in a program, I'm biased, of course, like my own Accelerate Me, buying them the book, buying them, the giving them the resources, and of course, helping our managers know this is important. I think just by you as the organization, putting that out there formally, we have this tool, we have this program, we want you to utilize it. That to me is half the battle right there. Just letting them know it's important and you have made that investment.
Well, and the interesting thing is, you and I have talked about this many times, and I will say that your program, Accelerate Me, is fantastic. I've been through it. I've co-facilitated it with you, so I'm biased as well. And we both have books on this subject that people can read. But people need to do more than read books, right? They need to actually do the activities, need to sit down and do the work. They need to feel like they're supported by their organizations who are helping them. And it's rare that organizations are spending much money on anybody who's not a manager, right? So be willing to actually invest some money in those younger employees that you want to keep.
Yeah, Andy, this is the hot button for me. And we work with so many organizations, and I'm still seeing the divide, and I can predict their engagement scores based on this. We have organizations who know this is a problem and they want to make an investment. And there are those who say, train the managers, and that's important. We have to do that. And then they stop 100% of the onus on the manager, right? And then there are the organizations who get it and they say, okay, we have to educate managers, but what if we took some of that investment and gave it to the employees who want to own their career? How much more work would that take off the plate of our managers? Then they thank us, right? And so, yes, I think making a mental shift and an investment shift, giving career development tools, resources, programs right to the employees themselves, especially if they're at home. Even more important that you give them these tools. And the caveat there, live virtual moments, the most impactful thing you can do, right? It could be read a book, but let's come together and talk about it. You've got to add that human element. People want to talk about this because it's about our lives. It's our most important topic.
Yep. Nobody cares more than us. And when we're given a position, a platform to go and do that, people get more excited about it. And how much money can we save companies in the end by, investing in their employees? But I know we're preaching to the choir, to the talent development professionals, right, who know this. We want to open their eyes. You've been in that position, Christine. You've been a talent development executive with a large company with Sony. So you've been on both sides, and I know you have a lot of empathy for where people are right now in trying to find ways to develop and engage their people in this virtual and volatile world. So last question for you, any other thoughts, advice, what should our talent development professionals really be thinking about, and what type of actions can they be taking to make sure that they're engaging their people and giving them the opportunities to own their careers?
Yeah, I think, some of it is that I think most talent development people, the ones I've worked with, we're probably more of the altruistic, strategic people, and we want to do such a good job. And I think in times like this, we need to let go of some of our perfectionistic tendencies, which I've had clients, and I've done this myself, is we want to roll out these programs because we know they're important, but we We want to focus on one thing at a time and make sure everything's perfect and everything's branded perfectly. And then we don't execute fast enough. And what I'm finding right now is good enough is good enough when it comes to getting employees career development resources. It doesn't have to be the perfect program in the perfect order with the perfect target audience. Make sure employees know there are resources for them. Pilot groups. It's better to execute sooner and faster now. Don't wait until 2021 to say, okay, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do next year. Too late, right? You're going to be missing a lot of opportunity and lose some good people this year. So get rid of the perfection. I have to do that constantly, and it's so hard. It's so hard to do that.
Progress over perfection. I'm a big fan of that, but it's easy for me to say. I've never really been a perfectionist. Christine, this has been great. We've covered so much ground in this session. We've talked about how the pandemic has affected career development, what good career development looked like before, and what challenges are getting in the way under this pandemic. We talked about the risk of not investing in career development, not doing anything about this, what managers can do to make career development more personal, how to help employees take more ownership of their careers, the things that employees can do to really own their careers by understanding their energizers, their values, their vision, their blind spots, and having those conversations with their managers. The importance of discovering those blind spots and what that can do for you. We talked about how organizations can help their employees own their careers by investing in those areas, creating those live moments, and the importance of progress over perfection. So much great stuff here, Christine. This has really been fantastic. For anybody who wants to follow you, get in touch with you, get the book, where should they go to do that?
So LinkedIn is a great place to connect. I always post a lot of giveaways and specials on there on the book. And we've got gettherefasterbook.com, and there's a lot of resources on there right for your employees as well.
Awesome. And go get the book on Amazon, Get There Faster. Like I said, I've read it. I think it's fantastic. I've already left my 5-star review, and I'm excited for more people to read it and share with their employees as well. Christine, thank you so much for joining us, sharing all of your wisdom, experience, and so much value here. And thank you to all of you for tuning in, for being present, for learning with us today. Make sure before you go on to anything else, you take out that pen and notebook, you write down what are those 2-3 key takeaways you had from today? What's the thing you want to do when you get back into work? What's the thing that's going to make a difference? Make sure you write that down. Make sure you take some action so that we all get more value from this. And if you haven't already, make sure you upgrade and get your all access pass so you can watch this again. You can join our live Q&A sessions, our live roundtable sessions. And with that, I will see you on the next session.